Hi, everyone. Thanks for coming. Okay, by a quick show of hands, how many of you are using Agile in your organization today? Okay, pretty good, pretty good. Keep them up if you are using Agile when applied to your Appian projects. Almost all the people who raised their hand are also doing it with Appian. That's great. So we practice Agile internally. That's how we deliver our software. Every quarter we put out a new release, and this last release is the biggest we've ever put out. And Agile is what enables us to do that. We're strong believers in that. Our professional services group uses Agile in all of our engagements. We encourage our partners who engage with our customers to use Agile practices as well, whether it be Scrum or some variation. And we consider it a best practice for successful delivery. So that's what we want to talk about today. For those who maybe don't use Agile, I think mostly everyone in here does, so maybe this is more of a refresher. I just want to kind of recap some key aspects of Agile. Really the key thing is that it allows for a very quick feedback cycle by delivering value in small increments. And so we can quickly build, deploy, and repeat that, and each time get some feedback from what we just deployed so we can roll that back into our backlog and then and do the next thing. And so that's really important with Appian as well. Because it allows you to have reduced risk. So you reduce your risk with each iteration. You learn more about what your users are doing. You increase the visibility. So in each of these sprint reviews or deliveries, you can say, hey, here's this new value we just got out there. Everyone should start using it, right? So it's a repeated advertising campaign. And you get value to your users earlier. So they are using the products, using the new features, using whatever new capabilities you just put in your application, and each increment gives them value earlier in the cycle, so they're not waiting for a 6 months delivery or something like that. You're really quickly getting stuff out there and building confidence in what you're doing because you have that feedback loop, you have a communication mechanism between you and your users as you're deploying on Appian. So here's a vastly simplified representation of that cycle. Build, test, deploy. And that's going to be the theme of this talk, rapid cycles of build, test, and deploy, because we're going to be talking about each of these phases in some more detail. And we are, I guess the overall thing I want to emphasize is that we are constantly tuning Appian, the product, the platform, to be better suited for Agile. So with the best practice in mind, we're constantly putting features in Appian that make it easier to build, make it quicker and safer to deploy, and part of that is making sure that testing is a first-class concern. So I'm going to talk about some features that help with building, make building quicker. My colleague Jupiter, also in the engineering department, is going to talk to you about some testing and automated testing and how to do that. And Sylvan's going to talk a bit, and actually Jupiter's going to talk a bit about deployment, and Sylvan will talk about deployment as well. So we'll get kind of the full cycle and try to reemphasize this theme as we go along. So I'm going to tell you about a really cool feature that's new in 16.2 that we call data type evolution. You might also see it referred to as fluid data type change management. And what this is that you only have to focus on the changes you're making to your data type without being concerned about all of its dependents. Because when you change a data type now, all of its dependents will always use the latest version of that data type. And those changes are reflected immediately. So we can intelligently and automatically update dependents based on those changes. And that's true for every design object except for process models. Process models, stay tuned, but process models are still, when you change a data type, you'll be given an opportunity to view the process models that use that data type and with one button still update those, but it's just not automatic. There's still that secondary step. But every other design object, it's true now that when you change a data type, all those design objects refer to the latest one. And this also happens to help with deployment. So you only need to export those objects that have changed. So when you change your data type and say you have 6 dependent objects that use that data type, you don't need to export those anymore unless they have also changed. So if you've added a field to your data type and you don't need to change a rule to pay attention to that field, but that rule uses that data type, that's fine. You don't have to include that rule in your export package anymore. Now, if you need to change the rule to pay attention to that field, maybe read that field or do some calculation based on it, then you would include that in your export package. But it makes it really a lot simpler. And then the other really important part of this is you don't need to delete the data type on the target system before you import your package that contains that changed data type. So this was really a source of error before, where you would have to delete the data type on the target system, and now some of its dependents would be pointing to that old deleted type, but you might forget to import those. They wouldn't be in your import package. And it was just too much to think about. We've vastly simplified that, and it saves time and greatly reduces errors during deployment. And there's no special steps you need to take to get this benefit. On upgrade, everything will continue to act just as it did before. And then when you change a data type, its dependents will start using the latest version. So it's a worry-free upgrade, nothing you need to worry about. It just works, which is beautiful. As a convenience, we've also included a log that will show you any dependent or design objects that use a data type that's out of date. And that log has actually been in the product since 7.11, so you can check it today. But again, it's optional. You don't even need to know about that until you change the data type that might be being used by one of these dependent objects. So this really improves the design process, and going back to the theme, it makes it really much quicker to build applications on Appian. So whether you change your data type in the data type designer, whether you are changing your data type by importing an XSD, or by consuming a WSDL that might be changing with a web service, so the WSDL document might be changing its definition in concurrent development with your Appian deployment. Those changes are automatically picked up. There's no need to go through extra steps. Anytime you change a data type, all the dependent objects automatically use the latest version. So I've said that 3 or 4 times now. Hopefully that point got across. And then there's more to say about this, though, too, because as you probably are aware if you've been using Appian, you can use data types to map to underlying databases through data stores. And so there's a configuration on data stores now that allows you to automatically update that underlying database schema. So on each data store, you can say, yeah, allow a change to a data type to actually change the underlying table that's mapped to this. So you change your data type to add a new field. It will automatically find the table that maps to that data type to store the instances of that data and add that new column. Now that may be not suitable for some systems where you have strict rules via policy that a DBA must make all schema changes. And so we have an admin override in the admin console that allows you to configure it so that perhaps on a production system, you don't allow this. You still have a database administrator make changes to the schema. But on your development system, this is really nice for rapid development. I've used it myself, and it makes it such a joy to develop applications when I'm evolving the data type. A lot of the extra steps are gone now, and it's very smooth. And along those same lines, what we do is when you update a data type, you'll be presented with a dialog like this, which will show you, hey, you have a dependent data store, and if there's more, it'll show you all the dependent data stores that's using this data type. And if automatic schema updates are off via that admin override or because that data store doesn't have the box checked, you can use the DDL. So you'll see a yellow box like this that says, hey, warning, if you make this change, it won't map to the underlying database anymore. Use this DDL to give to your DBA to update the database. But if you have automatic schema updates on, then we'll just show you a nice informational message that says, hey, you changed your data type. It didn't map to the old database, but we've fixed that for you. We've actually added that column for you. So really, it makes it a lot. We've gone kind of the extra mile to make it really a lot easier to work with data types, a lot easier to modify those data types, and really recognizing that rapid iteration as part of the Agile process where you don't have to get it right the first time. Right? The whole idea is you do something, you try it, you put it out there, you see what happens, you get feedback. And if it works, great. Most likely, though, you forgot about something. Oh, I forgot it. I should probably put a field for like who edited this thing last, or I need to add like a document attachment to this. So you go back and you modify your data model, and now it's just so much easier. So that's what I had to say about data type evolution and the build phase of the cycle. I'm going to turn it over now to Jupiter Munoz, who's going to tell you a lot about testing.
Thank you, Brett. Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. I saw a few people come in the room as we were starting the presentation, so A lot of people already raised their hands about using Agile, so let's do this the other way around. Who is not using Agile within your organizations? Raise your hand. Okay, perfect. Still quite a few people. All right, great. Then this won't be new to you, but still, I want to continue to reemphasize what Brett was saying before. And when it comes to testing, we think that Agile is about making small changes, but those small changes have a big impact. Many of you that have been around in IT for a long time are familiar with the classic waterfall scenario. You develop your applications, and then you wait for a couple months. Then you get your testers involved, and then everybody goes in, starts testing the application, and starts finding bugs. And then in some nightmare scenarios, we have this long list of issues, and we have to sit through meetings to figure out what's the priority, should we really fix it, is it time for us to delay the release. So in any event, the point here is that if you do testing from the beginning, then that small change will have an impact eventually. So again, it's all about Agile. Now, for the very few people that raised their hands at the end, this is in case it doesn't come across, this is a person going through a teenage phase. so that he's also very angry because you're not using Agile. So he's just trying to say, testing is not a phase. It's something that you should be doing all throughout. All right, that's all that was. But seriously, when we're talking about Agile, we're not talking just about having your QA department perform Agile. We're talking about the whole team. What we want is a final product. I know we have the division of labor, and you're responsible for coding, and you're responsible for testing. But in the end, we're all responsible for making sure that we have a final product that meets the business requirements. And so the only way to go about that is making sure that everybody tests. So your developers are going to do some testing. Developers or designers are going to do some testing. We're going to call that unit test for those that are not familiar. It sounds like most of you are. Your testers are going to do testing. Hopefully, we'll bring it up a notch so that we can automate it, and it doesn't have to be tedious. And as you continue to build new features, you create your test suite, you have it in some place, and then you just re-execute it in an automated fashion without having to go back and do it manually and whatnot. And then your product managers or your product owners also have to be involved, right? They are responsible for making sure that you have a final product. So working with your QA team, making sure that everything that is in the test suite is exactly what you want to have, and taking it back to what Brett was saying earlier about that quick feedback loop. If it doesn't work out, then you fix it, and then you go on and on and on and on. So that's kind of like what I want to say with this slide, actually. The important thing is to shorten the feedback loops. Like, we really want a product that works. If something doesn't work, it's not the end of the world, but at least you're doing it in small chunks, small increments, and you make sure that everything is working, and then you just move on to the next thing instead of like coming back and fixing the same type of issues every time and time again. Okay, so with that said, let me talk a little bit about the features that we have in the product that are going to help you do testing. So we have a testing strategy. As I said earlier, everybody's going to test. So we're going to start with the bottom-up approach. We're going to have our designers create test cases. And so most of your logic goes into expression rules. So the product provides object-level testing that it allows you to test specific logic, like very small things, but in the end, that is very important to make sure that your application is working, right? Like, how many times have you created an application and then by the end of the day, it's really hard for you to track where the problem is? So that happens because you're not tracking the smallest building blocks, which is exactly what we're trying to do here. The other thing that this is going to allow you to do is to self-document your logic, right? Agile is about not having documentation. Everything is self-documented. So this is a way that you can go about that. So if you're creating, let's say, 3 or 4 different test cases for one of your expressions, somebody that comes in doesn't necessarily have to go through the full logic of the expression rule. They're going to look at the test cases. They're going to see the name and see, like, okay, this makes sure that your email address is valid. Great. Okay, so that's what this function does. That kind of thing. And of course, we provide the ability to do this unit testing in an automated fashion. So let's talk a little bit about that. We have new smart services that allow you to test all of the expression rules within an Appian system. So that's the start rule test all. Or you can also do that on an application by application basis. And so some of you may be asking, I know we just had lunch, but some of you may still be thinking, but why do we need two different functions? Well, there's different scenarios that you want to do this in, right? If you're in a development environment, you may just want to be testing the 1, 2, or 3 applications that you're currently developing. Whereas if you're doing a full deployment to production where you already have 10, 15, 20 different apps running, what you want to do is run it in production before giving access to all of your end users to make sure that nothing broke. Because obviously, some of your applications maybe just have some common objects that are used across all of your different applications. Great. So how do we go about using these smart services? Because it's kind of like, okay, those are great. I can put them in my process models. Well, if you put it in that process model, one thing that you may want to do is say, if something fails, then why not send a task to the person that last modified that expression rule so that they can go in and fix it themselves. And you can have this running every night. Now you may say, well, what if the developer goes in and they fix a couple of rules, then they go to lunch, come back, go to Twitter, and then what do I do? Like I lost track of what I did. Okay, well, if you were in the keynote this morning, we were talking about having the ability for smart services to be executed from cell interfaces. So you can also generate a report, and this report, how do we point on this thing? There you go. All right, just close your eyes. You can rerun the test in an ad hoc fashion, and it can give you a report that is going to tell you, okay, you fixed 10, there's 5 more to go. Those are showing at the bottom of the screen, so go ahead, click them. It'll take you to the expression rule, and just go ahead and fix it. So another way that you can do that. Now, something that we want to emphasize a lot these days, especially one thing you're going to be hearing is continuous integration and continuous deployment, right? We want to make everything automated. We don't want to spend too much time on these things. There's a lot of effort that goes into building software, and most of the time, we spend that effort in the actual building of the software. But, sometimes maybe you don't focus too much on testing, or maybe you don't focus too much on deployment. And that's kind of like what we're trying to address today by talking about these individual phases and how you can do them better. So one way that you can go about doing them better is that you can also have this expression rule testing through a CI tool. So I'm not showing anything in Appian here. We're using those same smart services. We're wrapping an Appian web API around them, and then we're just calling them from a CI system. In this case, this is Jenkins, for those of you that are familiar with it. But you can do that from any CI integration system as long as it provides access to web APIs, which most of them should. You should be able to do this from, say, Bamboo or GoCD or many others out there in the market. Okay, so earlier I was talking about a testing strategy and how everybody has to test. And okay, I started with the designers, small building blocks, bottom-up strategy. What about the top-down strategy? Your testers. How do they go about doing that? Do they go about that doing testing manually? No, we want you to automate that testing, right? So there are tools out there, such as Fitness, that allow you to write your tests using a strategy called business-driven development, I believe. Deliver? No, I think it's development. But anyway, let me show you something really quickly, and then I'll come back to the presentation. So we have a tool that works with Fitness and that allows you to perform testing of your Appian interfaces. This is the actual product embedded in Fitness. And what you'll see is that we have different methods. And what is important about this is the syntax, right? So it's very straightforward. Click on menu. Okay, click on menu actions, click on menu record. Things for doing in news, checking your tasks, checking your records, checking your reports, actions, etc. And most importantly, everything is about performing actions, right? So populate field first name with Jupiter, last name with Munoz. Click button, submit, that kind of thing. So it's very straightforward. It's a wiki page. And now that you have this, you can have your testers work with your product owners and come up with that test suite, right? You don't even necessarily need to wait until the final product is done. If you have some early mock-ups, you know what fields you're going to capture, then you can start working on that. We actually don't care about what's on the screen yet, right? But you know what's going to be in your forms. There's this information that needs to be populated, and it's in this order. So go ahead, enter that in this wiki page, and once that form is ready, we can test it out. We're done. Okay. So now I'm going to be talking a little bit about deployment, and I'm going to take another poll real quick. So show of hands, how many people are able to do deployment in less than a week for your applications? Okay, a few. What about less than 3 days? Okay, about the same people. Sounds like those people are probably using continuous integration. How about the moment your application is ready? Okay, all right, so we have some room for improvement there. So anyway, this whole thing is because what I wanted to say is like what we all want to do is to have that easy button, right? We just want to make sure that you build your application, we automate the testing, and then you just say, click, and you're done with it. Okay, so how do we go about doing that? And Sylvan is going to be talking a little bit more in detail about this. I'm introducing the topic, and then I'm showing you some of the features that we have within Appian, so you can do that. But we'll have a demo at the end so that you're going to love it. Okay, so how do we go about doing this? Well, first of all, you store your code into VCS, a version control system. So how do we go about doing that? Appian creates zip files. So we take that zip file, we unzip it, we put it in GitHub or SVN, and you have it up there. Automated testing, I was just talking about it. You deploy it, you test it. You test it once it's in one of your sites, maybe your QE site, and then you deploy it to production, also using some automated tools. Okay, so actually let me go back for a second because I lost my cue here real quick. So we store our applications and our admin control settings in version control system. So for those of you that have been using Appian for quite some time, you'll realize that this is the first time that we're going to be able to store admin console settings in Appian. So this is something that we're going to continue to work on throughout this quarter, so you'll see more of this. The focus for this release 16.2 was to be able to work on admin control settings that allow you to do a full deployment, and you don't need to go back to the admin console and set something up. The whole point is to do everything automated. So we focused on these specific settings, and some of that will come across more succinctly in the demo. So a little bit about admin settings. So what can you do with them? Well, you can export them. So you can go to the admin console, and you'll see something at the top, so you can filter on the different types or by date. So maybe you created a data source 3 months ago and another data source a month ago. So you only care about the last one that you modified, so you can filter by date, for example. And then you select what you want to export, and then you go ahead and create that package. It's very small over there, but apart from being able to download the package, there's another link to download an import customization file. So what is that, you may ask? Okay, think about your data sources. Do you have the same credentials to access the database in your test environment and in your production environment? Are you pointing to the same server in your test environment and production environment? No. Since I was talking about using version control systems, do you want to store those credentials in a version control system that everybody has access to? No. So that's the reason that we provide this file. You can keep it someplace else, but when you deploy from environment A to environment B to environment C, you have this file that has those settings stored, and then when you're doing automation, you also go to the right file, pick up those credentials, and have everything deployed. No need to do any manual changes. And for importing your admin console settings, you can also go to the admin console. The first thing is let me go back. You import your admin console package. Along with that, you can import your import customization file with the settings that I was just talking about. And while we're at it, why not also import the application that you're interested in, or if it's a patch, you can also do that from that same interface. Now I'm going to turn it over to Sylvan, that is going to talk a little bit more about this topic, and then we'll come back, do a demo, and then take a few questions.
Thank you, Jupiter. All right, so up to now, we've seen all of this amazing feature in the product that allows you to quickly build, quickly test, and also do some deployment. And what I want to do is I just want to bring it all together through the concept of continuous integration that Jupiter mentioned. So the goal really is to automatically and as fast as possible take the changes you have done in deployment, push them to version control, and then from there, have your CI tool like Jenkins, pick them up, and put them into test. And the reason is, again, this quick feedback cycle. The faster it goes to test and the faster you run the test, the sooner you know if it's actually going to be working or if it needs to go back to development for some fixing again and again and again. So you could do that several times a day. As soon as you put something to version control, you could have the system be triggered and run the test. Or you could do that once a day or on whatever schedule that you guys want. The key really is, again, that feedback loop. As fast as possible, you need to get feedback on the code that you just created to make sure that it's working. From what we talked about so far, the only piece that is missing, so we have the testing, we have the quick development. What we are missing is a way to actually do the automated deployment. Because once you export your application, you have a zip file. If you're ready to version control, it's still version control. It doesn't go automatically to the next environment. So what we are providing is a tool that was developed by the Appian Center of Excellence called the Automated Deployment Manager. And that allows you to fill the gap into what we just discussed. Using that tool, you are able to take that zip file that you exported from the environment, and it doesn't matter if it's the application, if it's the admin settings, it works with both. And through a very simple command, these changes will be written down to your version control, either Subversion or GitHub. And from there, we are also able to pick them back up, zip them back, and then push them forward. So the value really is, if you have a team of developers that just checking in their changes throughout the day, at the end of the day, you may want to just grab whatever was done today. So we accept either a range of commits or the entire repository. And from the code and the XML files that live in your code repository, we are rebuilding that package. So we're creating an application pretty much from the raw files and then allowing you to deploy it forward. The tool that's the versioning, the tool does the deployment, and the tool also allows you to run database files in case your DBA or your organization has strict policy around who can modify your database schema. So if Appian cannot do it out of the box through the data store feature that Brett mentioned, then if you have the DDRs, you can give them to our tool here, and you can update the database automatically as part of deploying the Appian application. Again, the goal is to automate the entire thing. If that's not possible in your organization, then you could have someone in the DBA department run the script for you, but that kind of breaks the loops here, because if everything is automated except that you have to send that email to that one person that can access your database, then you break the automation. The goal is to have this quick loop as fast as possible. If you are familiar with Jenkins, you will recognize this. It's the way that you would run that from Jenkins. So Jenkins will be listening to your version control system, and as soon as there is a change, it will invoke our tool through a shell script, either on Linux or Windows. We support both, which will pick up the changes from the repository, build it, and deploy them forward. In the end, what we want to achieve is this. This is the overall picture going one step further than continuous integration. This is continuous delivery, which means that you take your changes, move them to version control, your CI tool pick them up, and then build them and automatically push them to a unit test server, run the test based on the unit rule testing that Jupiter mentioned. If that passes, take the same package, move it to the next test environment, run the test with fitness to make sure that everything works from the UI, that the functional testing is okay, regression testing is okay, and keep going forward all through all of the quality assurance gate all the way to production. If you set up that right, you could potentially deploy changes in a matter of minutes at this point because everything is automated. The only manual step is for the designer to add the code to version control. So that's first step where you invoke our script to add them to either subversion or GitHub is the only manual step left. You may want a manual gate before you go to production, just for someone to push the button, make sure it's ready. But potentially, everything could be automated. How many of you are using something like this today? Great, we can do it tomorrow then. Perfect.
Start tomorrow.
I'm going to give it back to Jupiter for a quick demo.
Thank you. So actually, let me go back here for a second, because obviously, this is kind of like the end game that we're talking about. So I'm just going to piggyback off this to show you the demo for a specific scenario. And the scenario that I'm going to show you is basically you've done all of this, and then you deploy to production, but you want to run a regression test in production before you hand it over to your end users. So let me see. Over here. Okay. Is this? I'm trying to do that. All right. Let me. Good. Okay. So you're gonna get tired of hearing quick ups today and tomorrow, but it's really great. I actually use it to create this application. So I created a department sales application. It's sitting on my QA environment, as you can see at the top. And it's using only one data store because I only have one record. So what I'm going to do now is just go to the admin console just to show you that I don't have any additional data sources there. That's going to be part of the demo. We're going to move a data source from another environment to the QA environment. And then we're going to be using Jenkins for all of the things that you see here. Like there's not going to be any manual interaction. In fact, this takes only 4 minutes, except for me pausing the video at some point. So the first thing I'm going to do is show you that there's something that is broken. So testing my rules, you're going to see that this is pointing to my QA environment in Jenkins. And then all I'm going to do is re-execute the test and say build now using the smart services and web APIs that I was talking about earlier. So I go to my console output. I get an ID for the test run that it's being executed. It's executing all of those tests in my application. At some point, I'm going to get the results. Those results are going to come back, and I'm going to be able to see if there's something wrong with my application. So in this case, there's an error in 2 expression rules that have to be fixed. So one of the good things that you can do here is say, okay, let me open that rule. It's going to give you a message, what went wrong with that, and a link to the actual expression rule. So you can just click on that. And it's going to show you your expression rules. Surely enough, you run test cases, there's something that is failing. So you can go back and fix it. Of course, I'm not going to do that today. What I'm going to do is just show you that I have a package that you can use to do that. So now I'm moving over to GitHub, where I already have my initial application, the one that I just showed you and that it's broken. That's the department sales application. And then what I'm going to do is run through 4 different steps so that I can deploy it and retest it. So first step, manually. Because we're going to production, so we want someone to actually come in and say, I want to deploy from environment A to environment B. If your environment is production, you don't want that to happen automatically, or most likely you don't want for that to happen automatically. So this is a Jenkins job. It's using the ADM tool that Sylvan was talking about. And all we're going to do here is just say, okay, I'm going to take this. It's going to take a package that I have installed locally, and it's going to upload it to GitHub. So that's step number 1. It's a success. We go back to the main page. I'm going to refresh GitHub. So now you'll see that there's a package called bug fixes. Awesome. Step number 1. Done. We have a version of record. Everything is in GitHub. And if you want, you could roll it back. And then what I'm going to do is run this job called Appian World Demo. And that job is going to actually run 4 more jobs under the cover. It's going to rebuild an application zip file from what I uploaded into GitHub. It's going to deploy it to the environment that I showed you a minute ago. It's going to run the expression rule test, and then it's going to run the test from fitness so that it's also going to go through that end-to-end testing. So deployment from one environment to the next, and then full testing, bottom up and top down. So now there's nothing to see, because basically what I'm going to do is just say build it, and I'm just going to go and show you what the latest result was, because this was executed before. So before, this test was breaking. That's what I showed you earlier, right? My expression rule was breaking. So now it's being executed. I'm going to click on that. There's a couple of jobs to build it. There's a couple of jobs to test the expression rules and then test it from the interface. So go back to the main project, show that everything is green. Everything has passed. So now I'm just going to go into each of them to show you what happened real quick, because there was really nothing to see here because everything is automated. So that's moving it from GitHub into a package. Then this is deploying it to my QA system that I was showing a moment ago. So let's go into that. So you'll see there's just a few lines deploying that your deployment is in progress. We're finally done. The expression rules, if you remember the screenshot from before, there were 2 errors. Now there's no errors whatsoever. So everything went as expected. And then finally, run the test on my user interfaces. Since this is integrated with fitness, what you'll see here is the actual fitness script. There's no errors. And if there were, then it will tell you exactly in which step it failed. So then I guess the only thing is to go back to my application, which I just deployed. And you'll see that the objects are there. So now just to show you, before there was only 1 data store. Now there's 2 data stores. So this has been successfully deployed. And just with what Brett was saying, we're using this new data source. Admin console settings, it's in your new environment. The connection tests successfully. So that's an end-to-end integration from testing, deployment, up to the next environment. That's basically what we wanted to show you guys today. So just a very quick recap. I'm not even going to go through all of this. But our goal was to share with you some of the Agile practices. Fortunately, it looks like most of you are familiar with them. So this is just a recap of that. And then the features that we discussed earlier were data type evolution. We did some testing of expression rules and testing from fitness, import and export of admin settings, and then finally automated deployment and continuous integration and delivery. A little bit of a plug. There's a session coming up at 2. I went really quickly through testing, but if you want to know all the details, the session about Test for Success, Cloud Plus Agile, you should be able to see that, and it's going to go into detail on all the fitness and expression rules. From COE, we also have the playbook, so you'll be able to see some of those details over there, and also about this full integration with Jenkins. There's a full recipe on how to go about doing this. This is step-by-step. It's just going to walk you through it, so you can test it and just start to get your feet wet. If you have any questions, I'll be in the back of the room a little later. But at this point, I guess we have a few minutes for questions.
We have 5 minutes? Okay. Great.
So we have about 5 minutes for questions, so we're going to turn it over to you guys over there.
Yes.
Have you guys actually used
So,
the literal upgrade feature?
yeah, so the question was, I showed a slide that said worry-free upgrade, easy upgrade. Have we really made upgrade that much easier? I'll say that my statement was it's specific to data type evolution. So that new feature, you won't have any backward compatibility issues with upgrade. The new feature doesn't activate until you actually change the data type on your system. So when you upgrade, which is still the same process as before, you won't have any. Yeah, we should talk later. I can get more feedback from you on that. But when you upgrade, everything will work the way it did before. And it was just kind of a reassurance that just upgrading doesn't make this feature suddenly start making your design objects point to the latest data type. You have to actually take an action, which is update the data type. Go ahead.
So I understand that the idea of having, using the version control system
Yeah.
is to contain the version of the deployment. So does it mean like I can also use previous versions to reverse my deployment because of any mistakes or something?
That's a good question.
Yep. So the question is, so it sounds like what we're trying to do here is to be able to automate the deployments and being able to do that automatically. What about rolling back? Obviously, that's a scenario that you can also have. Like if you have everything versioned, there's nothing preventing you from deploying a package that was before the latest one to the next environment. Those are all the versions that you deploy to the system. So at any point in time, you could actually go ahead and do that. Yeah.
And the-
Even if we make changes to database,
Well, that's
yeah,
good
that's what I
point.
was about
Good
to
point.
say.
Good point.
that's what I want to make sure that I can reverse.
Sure.
Right now I have to
Snapshots.
take a snapshot of the environment
Right.
before doing my deployment.
Right.
I want to know if using this application or this new way, I can go back.
Right.
Without having a snapshot.
Okay.
So yeah, the follow-up question was, especially with data changes, the best practice is to take a snapshot. Would this rollback capability preclude that or substitute for that? And Jupiter, you can answer as well. My answer is no, you should still take a snapshot. That still is the best practice. What this would allow you to do is for objects that you've changed the definition of, say like a record type or a web API, you can easily go back to the older definition of that. But for instance, if you created a new object in the new package, deploying the old package won't delete the new object, right? That's still a manual thing. So there's still, and especially data, the sanctity of data is still important to take that snapshot before deployment. Let's see, I think we have time for one more question, maybe two? Yeah, one more. Okay.
Okay. So the question is, what
Test coverage.
test coverage, like what type of test coverage do we have in here? Obviously, this is a demo application. We don't specifically have any test coverage on like how many you should be testing or if all of your code is being tested at that point in time. Okay. I'm not sure.
Right. So yeah, I understand. So we do have
apologize.
stats on how many tests there are, but we don't identify this expression rule doesn't have any tests.
Oh,
That's,
yes,
that you can
yes.
look at each expression rule and see, but we don't have a roll up, and that's great feedback. We're like Jupiter said,
That's a
we are
good point.
continuing to enhance this product, this particular feature, and that is an enhancement that's certainly on our radar.
Well, thank you, everybody. Oh, one
Why
last
don't you
question.
come up and we can take questions up. We're out of time, and we probably have to clear the stage, but we can take questions kind of on the side and until we get out.
Thanks, everyone.